Good morning, YouTube. This is Baba on the spot. Baba, as usual. As you know, standing in for the Prince of Milav, and I'm here to speak to you about the London riots. And as you may well already know, Baba on the spot really is actually standing in for the Prince of Milav, who is an anthropologist and happens to live in the States. And as I'm not from Europe or the UK or London or England for that matter, I'm not going to be speaking about the riots in terms of their culture or what it means. However, as part of studying anthropology, I study people. And one of the things that I have discovered is an interesting trend of the use of technology in the riots. One of the things that came up is the fact that particular rioters were using BlackBerries to orchestrate or at least organize rioting behavior. And not only that, Facebook and Twitter and other social media were being delivered as a form of creating or choosing spots to organize riots and etc. And even like individuals who have posted inflammatory statements on Twitter and Facebook, I believe, have been arrested by police for like suggesting that people go to particular areas. Now, Blackberries in general were used by some of the rioters, and on Monday, Research in Motion, the developers of the BlackBerry, stated that they would assist authorities to the extent that the law requires it by giving them messages from their BlackBerry Messenger service. Except that one particular sub-element of the BlackBerry Messenger service is that it's encrypted, phone to phone. And they did this because they wanted to be able to, well, get financial institutions to use their network. And, point in fact, they don't have a master key. They have no backdoor. In fact, they've argued this repeatedly with other nation-states, such as India and China, that they can't just simply give them access to the messages. Certainly they could hand them the messages, but they can't do anything with it because they're encrypted. Now, that doesn't mean that the authorities can't attempt to decrypt them, but it does mean that BlackBerry can't just give them the contents. They're not capable of yanking out what's inside them. Now, hackers decided to attack BlackBerry's blog on the Research in Motion website. And as part of it, it was done by something like Team Toxic or whatever, and they argued this hugely intimidating post saying, rah, 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 we will release information on your employees that we got off your website if you give in to the authorities. Except for the problem here is that Research in Motion probably has, because some of the laws in the UK which require them to actually hand over the communications, the encrypted communications, to the authorities, also require that they don't tell anyone that they did it. So instead they put out a release saying, hey, well, we are obliged by law to assist the authorities and therefore we will. So these hackers probably hit them after the fact. Now this brings up another thing. One of something going on right now is that David Cameron has gotten in front of the House of Commons and spoken about cutting off social media in the event of future social unrest. In fact, this is on the BBC right now. England riots, government mulls social media controls. The government is exploring whether to turn off social networks or stop people texting during times of social unrest. Frankly, I'm extremely disturbed by this possibility. In fact, we've already seen this occur once before during the riots occurring in Egypt over President Mubarak's behavior. And then when people wanted to stop this back in January, and Egypt basically turned off their internet. Cut it off from the rest of the world. Point in fact, we have a lot of citizen journalism coming out of the riots. A lot of what we know about it are coming from people with smartphones. Yes, we can use smartphones to organize riots, to set the locations where looters should run to in order to stay ahead of the police, and the authorities have a really hard time staying ahead of them. Well, you know, not all technologies assist the authorities. Sometimes they actually assist the people, but they're tools. And if you cut off texting during these events, and you cut off the ability to send video and etc., or damage that, you're also hurting the people. And people have been using Twitter and Facebook and etc. in the aftermath in order to recombine themselves and tell a human narrative about what happened to them and actually talk about what's going on. Granted, you don't contact emergency services with texting and stuff like that, but instead of actually injuring the looters and stuff like that by cutting off their ability to send text messages, anyone who was actually organizing one of these things might generate their own network, parasitic or outside of the police networks, and you would only hurt the actual citizens that were sitting in the midst of this, who were essentially sending out their, you know, their own examination of what was going on. And we have numerous examples of journalists, the BBC and Think and other you know, new internet newspaper organizations and TV stations and stuff like that, using the information delivered into Facebook and Twitter by the general population to track the growth, expansion, and what was happening during the looting, and actually deliver a concept of what actually happened. Never before have we had such, like, you know, a down on the street concept of these events as we do now, when there's literally a camera in every person's hands and the ability to send out a message saying, hey, there's people smashing windows over here. In fact, in the States, police and authorities have been using Facebook in order to discover crimes and to prosecute them. In fact, there's actually been some amusing privacy concerns that have popped up about this also, where facial recognition is being used on different social networks like Facebook, of people pretty much posting videos and pictures of their ill-gotten goods from the looting. Well, the Prime Minister and MPs are talking about the, you know, cutting off social media during these events because the police can't keep up with it. They are in fact taking away something that is becoming an intrinsic part of our culture, which is the ability to know more about what's going on. And this will have some really dire ramifications. And, like, for example, it's going to also remove a lot of intelligence that the police have about what's going on in the first place. Just because they're bad at examining ongoing trends on social media or looking at patterns of communication on these encrypted networks doesn't mean that they should be cutting them off. Point in fact, the total blackout that happened in Egypt has been universally vilified. And now they're trying to escape from talking about a total blackout by saying, oh, we'll just cut off text messaging, or we'll just cut off the ability to get to Twitter or Facebook in the restricted areas. But it's still just as dangerous. I don't know precisely what this means or what these sort of discussions are, but it is an emergency, you know, gathering where they're saying, well, what can we do about this in the future? And what should they do about this in the future? They should think more about the way that people use social media, and they should use it for themselves, and keep in mind that telephone networks, telegraph, you know, radio, television, social media, all of these are forms of communication, and that communication can be turned for good, like the Twitter cleanup, the riot cleanup group, which now has like hundreds of thousands of followers, and the journalists who gathered a lot of their information from social media and citizen journalism about what was occurring that helps us, you know, get an idea of what happened and maybe why, now that we can sort it out. And the police themselves can also have developed their own reaction to social disorder if they had only had I don't know, a social media intelligence team. Rather than making everybody stupid and blind, they will probably be better off developing their own social media, you know, investigation arm, capable of responding to crises, like their own social media SWAT team, rising up and dealing with the way that these networks work, rather than cutting everyone off. Now that's all that I've got on it right now. I'll put a whole bunch of links in the pants bar. I hope that you have some ideas yourselves. I mean, if you're from the UK and you're concerned about this, let me know if you agree with a ban on all texting, or even like all use of smartphones, or I don't know, jamming or something like that. Should another riot break out and it's discovered that it's being orchestrated via social media, and how you feel about that. I mean, let me know. I'm very curious. Good night and good dreams.